Hello, listeners, and welcome to this third and final part of the mini-series with author Micah Losh. For early access to full-length ad-free episodes, you can find me at patreon.com/the Cult Vault and support the show from as little as £1 a month. Please be warned that this episode comes with sensitive themes and will include details of suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, and other difficult subject matter. Listener discretion is advised. If you need support with any of this subject material, you can call 998 in America or follow the links in this episode description for a list of countries and the suicide support numbers in your local area. Now here is Micah Losh, author of Mentally Diseased. There's something I've been reading recently by John Atack about doctrine over self. If anybody listening is really wondering how an individual can walk away from their family, from their own child, in the name of their chosen deity, God, figurehead. Doctrine over self is a really great way of explaining how that has happened. Just researching that could help people to understand, how your mum has chosen Jehovah's Witnesses over her own child.
Yeah.
One question I did have that I don't know if we'll be able to have a discussion or if you'll be able to answer it, but do you feel like your mental health has improved since you've been able to begin deconstructing your experiences with Jehovah's Witnesses? Or do you think that your journey towards improved mental health is something that you will always be working on?
Well, it's difficult because of course I used to get my mom would call the police on me because I would say, I don't belong to the true religion, so I deserve death because I'm not happy. And that belief existed in me from the age of 13 to well over 33. So, over 20 years. And I have gone to therapy in the past year. Um, I've just never, I've never enjoyed, not enjoyed, that's not the right word. I've never really gotten much from therapy. And it's probably because it was weaponized against me as a child. But I don't take antidepressants now. I don't um, go to therapy, but I cannot remember a day in my life I didn't want to die. And sometimes I just feel it's just existed so long that it's just a part of me. And it's frustrating because it not so much therapists really, like when I was going to therapy, they said, I haven't touched alcohol since the day I woke up in jail. I said I wouldn't. I'm a man of my word. And she was like, well, you're not drinking, that's good. She was really like, I don't want to say impressed, but she thought it was very positive I was writing a book. Um, yeah, I don't know if that'll ever go away. I wouldn't encourage other people to harm themselves or in their lives, but I certainly what all the things I would say to comfort them and stuff, I don't say to myself, and I really don't believe when anybody says to
Right.
me. It's really hard when you have factual proof that absolutely everyone you love doesn't care if you lose absolutely everything. You live in a disgusting, filthy place with drug addicts where you're abused and told I mean the mental abuse there was horrific and just I don't know. As far as mental health, I mean, I don't drink. Whether or not it's better, it's obviously better, but is it good? I would say no. I've lived with agony for so long. It's just there. I don't yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't know if that's a good answer. It's an
Well, it's a
honest one.
true answer. Yeah, it's a true answer. I mean, I guess I thought the answer to the improving your mental health would be leaving the organization behind. But I think maybe that's my rainbow answer. That's
Well,
the ideal result, isn't it? But of course, ill mental health is such a complex thing that it's not as simple as, oh, a lifetime of being subjected to coercive control and of receiving no support with ill mental health, which is just increased and been exacerbated over time, isn't answered with a simple, oh, leave the church and then everything will get better. And I think that that's a lesson that I need to understand. It's probably a good lesson for the listeners as well. But it is a hard truth, because of course I'd love to think that there's a way that you could not feel those things that you feel.
Yeah, I mean, well, like for me now, I live in like a sober living community, but like it's all God all the time. And I don't like the word trigger, but Alcoholics Anonymous is a lateral move to me to Jehovah's Witnesses. They quote they scripture, um, read from the Bible, and then they want to keep telling you it's not about God when it fundamentally is. I despise God. I despised hearing about him. I am an ardent atheist. I do not even care. Even if Jehovah God is the real God, I do not care. You are a failure. And there's a picture I like. I think it was, I don't know if they know that a Jew wrote it, but on a wall in Auschwitz, I believe it says, if there is a God, they will have to plead for my forgiveness, something like that. That's very much how I view it. I do see my son once a week, but like, to lose absolutely everything you love, to be divorced during that period, to be discarded by I mean, that's fine. That's what they can do. But like, I think a lot of people do get, at least they get to leave with their family or their kids. And some people don't. I mean, the harsh reality is people in cults are thrown into a world that they have been trained to fear, that does not understand them, that they do not understand. And I do have people who are supportive, but every time I talk to them, there is a massive chasm between us. I don't think they perceive it, but I do. I It's like I came out of the Matrix. I just don't fit in. I don't belong anywhere. And the only place, like the only real community is like, ex Jehovah's Witnesses. And I don't know. It's hard too sometimes when I think about like, why did I write this book? Sometimes I don't know. I mean, there were reasons. There were multi things, but I don't know. Sometimes I just hope somebody will be like, well, I don't have it as bad as this guy. I mean, and I'm not trying to, win the pain Olympics and be like, I have the worst life. That's not a title I want or anything, but like, I don't know. It's really difficult. It's really difficult. Like, I don't know. I wanted it to be true. I wanted my mother to love me for who I was, and she never did. And it's a really horrible thing to realize. If my dad was alive, he probably wouldn't care about me either. I mean, I don't know. The one thing I think is, at least I published a book that's immortality, because that's out there in the world forever, and people are going to keep leaving Jehovah's Witnesses. And my son will always have that. And I claimed what they promised, so I like to think of that. But it's just hard because there's just 10 million little things throughout the day. It just makes you realize, I don't know, just that you're awkward and strange and don't fit in. And you have to confront those things, the first time you celebrate a birthday. But it's really hard to find community as well that understands. People forget because that's not their life and they have their own problems. But you're so stunted in many ways. It's hard trying to play catch up, and a lot of people don't want to deal with it. It's uncomfortable. you know um it's very difficult to find your place. It really is.
I've heard it described sometimes as being infantilized, and the group that the dependency that you spoke about earlier, it creates that almost inability to make decisions for yourself, to navigate life without the community that that is fostered by the high demand religious group, which creates that infantilizing of members so that they don't know how to be independent, and so or to make grown up and rational decisions. But I think that your book is wonderfully written. I think it's an incredible resource for individuals, not only waking up or hoping to wake up, people that left ages ago, but even just for individuals like myself who were never a part of the Jehovah's Witnesses to understand it from a different perspective. Like you said, you've written a book now, so you leave a legacy in the world forever. And it will continue to be an education for people if they find a way to get a hold of it, and read it, because in these high demand religious groups, that can be a difficult task in itself. But I am really thankful that I got to sit down with you today and have this conversation, because in some alternate universes, maybe that wouldn't have been the case. You've mentioned the
Yeah.
XJW community. Do you feel like there are people within that community that you could reach out to if your well-being was taken a significant dive?
Yeah, I mean, there are people. I mean, I'm a stubborn person. I mean, and it's hard to like for me, the Twitter has been my favorite place to interact with other XJWs. I also have Instagram and TikTok and Reddit. But for me personally, I know sometimes people on Reddit have gotten really angry when I would talk about in the past saying like I'm feeling really suicidal. And one time somebody got real mad at me and said I should have put a trigger warning. And I mean, that didn't occur to me. I didn't even really realize that was a thing. But also, it's like, when you're having those feelings, they're not rational. Like everyone else in the world, if they told me they were gonna end their life, I would be like, oh, well, I don't think that's good. Would you like to talk about it? But when you feel those things inside, they feel so unique and they feel so true that it's just a different thing. I mean, it is hypocrisy, I guess, kind of in a sense, but it's just really difficult, because when you think for so long that the fact that you don't fit in this religion is evidence that you're evil and deserve death, it's hard to not just want that because it feels like destiny. It's, I mean, they even say apostates. I mean, when I was a believer, you believe that they like reject God and they want to serve Satan and die and want everyone else to like follow them and die. And it's like these really delusional things. But you believe them, and it can really be a lot when or when you see people and they they think that about you, and it's just difficult. And like the new year when that happened, that was the first time I realized like I really thought about the last year and what had happened, and then I thought about the coming year, but I never did that before because it was always just Armageddon's coming. That's all you think about. And then I spoke with a YouTuber, and he put our discussion online on January 11th, which was my mom's birthday, which really, really affected me. I really had no idea it would, but I realized I'm never going to celebrate a parent's birthday. It's just really difficult. And one thing that I think helps is, I never feel like I'm doing enough. Every single day, it's like, ugh. But sometimes if expand out, like, well, the past week or the past month, that helps, but like, I don't know. It's just really difficult. I want to leave behind. I want my son to know me. That's the most important thing. I don't know my dad, and I realize that I have no idea who raised me. My mother, I don't know who that is. I realize everything I thought was true is wrong. I have no idea who she is. And so I have a second book and a third book that are also in the works. So I I
That's
have a
huge. Oh my goodness, two books
yeah.
after this one. Yeah, that's significant, isn't it? Oh my goodness.
Well, and so my plan is 6 months after mentally diseased, I've always written poetry, and in my book, before each chapter, there's a poem.
Yes, I
Because
love that.
art, thank you. Art is the safe way to confront things. I can make a painting about feeling despondent, hurt, suicidal, whatever, and that was safe. Same, I could write, and kind of be vague. So I have 100 poems that I did not put in the first book that I wrote from the age of 18 to 38. And so I've already found another XJW to paint or to design me for the cover of that, because the first cover is made by Sarah Riches, I think. She's Australian. She's an XJW. And the moment I saw her art, I just loved it. And I was
I
like,
love
that's
that
what I want
cover
for the
art.
cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's really talented. She does some really cool stuff on old publications too. It's really cool. And so then the second artist, we met last week and we hung out, and it was weird to their upbringing was their parents were mostly disfellowshipped and they moved around a lot, but they experienced like the profound isolation. And it was really weird how a lot of our quirks were the same. Like I immediately felt like I knew her. It, I, it was really bizarre. And because I'm not uncomfortable, but I'm just, most of the time when I'm around people, I'm like, yeah, I'd rather not. I'd rather be elsewhere. It's just, I'm a bit of a curmudgeon. And but she makes really beautiful art, so she's going to design the cover for my second book, which I'm going to call Gangrenous Speeches, which is another Watchtower phrase. And then my third book, because I always loved like horror movies, heavy metal, and I was always told like that was satanic. And so I just want to write a really messed up like novella, where like a character essentially becomes a member of the ruling council of the one true religion and becomes the antichrist. And once he realizes how corrupt they are, he just, during COVID, like it's very much about Jehovah's Witnesses, but it will be fictional. But I hope it'll be transgressive. Like I want to deal with a lot of the really dark, ugly aspects. And I don't know, maybe that'll be cathartic, maybe not, but I want to call that one Despicable. And I found a third XJW artist who is going to paint me for the cover.
Wow.
So,
I love that.
it,
It's like you're creating your own community made up of former members of your former community.
well, yeah, I mean, I think they really do need each other. And also, I just like the idea of, people understand, because you also have some of the younger people that they're like, oh, well, I researched stuff when I was 8 years old on the internet and I saw through it immediately. And those people just don't understand what it is to have that absolute faith. Because, I couldn't go to the library or risk asking for a book, So I was in it for nearly 4 decades, and to lose that was staggering. It was an existential crisis. I had to go through every single aspect of my life and every belief, and say, do I really think this? Is this what I believe, or is this because of Watchtower? It's they say that some events are so big they change your DNA. I read that once, and I really feel like it was a slower process, but you know it it's just it's really unique. And I've talked to ex-Mormons, and it's like, oh yeah, I understand, you understand, be if you haven't gone through it. And it's not that it's fun or that you want to claim it, and so many people do try and help, but It's really, really difficult. Most people do not grow up thinking they will be immortal. They just don't. And so if that truly exists in your head and you lose it, it's really, really difficult. But I do think it makes you feel beauty in so many small things that other people just, like if somebody sneezes, I'll be like, oh, God bless you, because I could never say that. And it's like, it feels like, I don't know, it feels slightly rebellious. And I just never said it for 40 years. So it's new. Like it's really weird because you're on a journey, but it's also really crappy when it's just you on the journey because you have no one for the bad times and no one for the good times. It's a difficult thing.
I think that's what's so beautiful about the XJW subreddit as well, because people post in there about their first tattoos and their birthdays and going out and buying their first Christmas tree and going out trick or treating with their children for Halloween. There's a lot of firsts that are posted in that subreddit.
Uh-huh.
And these firsts are typically from fully grown adults um who are expressing, their excitement for having these firsts. And I remember seeing your post where you were like, hey, this is me, I've changed my username, I was this person, but now I'll go public with who I am on the day that my book's being released. And I just think that that's incredible. To have two more books in the works as well, almost like a collaborative project with you and other former members of the Jehovah's Witnesses as well. I think that's amazing. There's so many different amazing artists that are putting work out on work that's inspired by their experiences and their recovery, and also assisting and aiding in recovery as well. There's your poetry, there's Natalie Grand's graphic novel Cult Girls. There's so many
Yeah.
different ways that people are educating and recovering, and the artistry that is involved in that is absolutely incredible. I was supposed to go on Stephen Mather's show Cult Hackers the other day and actually talk about what guests have talked about in terms of their recovery and what strategies they use. And the big bulk of my sort of conversation with him was going to be focused around different artistic outlets that people have adopted or are focusing on since leaving their groups. Because as you said, like, God forbid you have a hobby when you're in a high demand
Yeah.
religious
Well,
group.
yeah. It all has to serve the group. Yeah. And if it takes away time, you can be an artist if you make illustrations for Watchtower, of angels preparing to murder families. That's okay. But, to be a professional artist, no. And that's that's one thing I always hated. It strips the individuality and the identity from members, but it also robs you of your time and so many hobbies. And yeah, I always loved art. I also make abstract paintings. Um, and drawings. The first time I was disfellowshipped, I had an opportunity to try stand-up comedy. And so I did. And I still have the flyer somewhere. And it was, now of course I was PG PG 13 because I was trying to get reinstated. But everything I read, it said be prepared to fail. And so I was like, okay, because how many people can say they've done that? Like
I could
I
never
always
do
wanted
that.
to do
I'd be terrified to do that. I'd be
that. And
like, oh no.
well, I always kind of we went to visit Bethel when I was about 10, and my dad went up in the World Trade Center and wanted me to go up, and I was afraid of heights and I didn't go. And like 3 years later he was dead, and then that building got destroyed, so I couldn't even go back up there and feel, and I always regretted that. That's one of my biggest regrets. So I've always, even as a JW, I tried to, if I wanted to do something, if it was, I would do it. And so I mean, I don't think I'm an inspiration or anything like that, but I do hope maybe I can encourage people to embrace what they want to do, because nobody wants to be a critic. No little kid says, you know what I want to do? I want to criticize other people's work. Nobody wants that. People want to make art and affect people or make people laugh. That's what people want. And I just think that's one of the most beautiful things about life, because I've had people reach out to me, and one person told me they read part of my book. Sorry, and they said it's like you're reading the words out of my head. And like, to know that you affect someone like that is really powerful, you know? Like, I don't know, that means a lot to me. Because Jehovah's Witnesses that leave, they just go through immense suffering. And people always say congratulations on getting out, which they mean well. But more than likely, they didn't want to get out. They wanted it to be true. They want their family back, but they can't go back. I cannot go back to a place that protects pedophiles. I cannot do that. And I also cannot save the people that I love because they think I serve Satan. So it's really difficult, but it is nice to connect with people, and for them to, I mean, I don't know. And my editor, Moses, who I love that his name is biblical, but he really elevated my writing. And I told him too, I said I want to be brutally honest in this. I don't want it to read as angry, and I would like it to be something that could potentially translate into like a movie or a Netflix series, because not for my glory, but Scientology has been exposed, Mormonism, but Jehovah's Witnesses, for the most part, people don't know that much about. And because they really hide how ugly they are. Like when I met with Moses, I said, I want you to know I used to pray to my God for him to kill you. I said, and I don't mean that as an insult, but to dress it up would be a disservice, because that's what you're doing.
The fact that you're writing, well, you've written a book, that's a huge accomplishment in itself. To have
Thank you.
the discipline to sit down and to the ability to sit down and write a full length memoir is is an incredible accomplishment. But then also to have that effect on individuals, I would say that that is inspiring, and I would say that you are an inspiration. You said no one wants to be a critic. You have put yourself in the position of being a critic and also exposing wrongdoings that are going on in the world, which can't be denied because they're your personal experiences. So, it's not like you can say, I think
Yeah.
this is happening. You can say, I know this happens because it has happened to me. And I think that there's going to be a huge need for more material like this in the future, in the near future, because there's like a reckoning that is happening with those born and raised in cults, and them coming forward to talk about their lives, which significantly differ from those that join high demand groups later in life. We're
Yeah.
seeing those voices come forward now because those children that were born and raised, they're now adults, and they're taking back that narrative, they're taking back that power, and they're putting content out in the world that stops these groups from being able to hide behind these carefully curated
Mhm.
images that they're putting out into the public. And you have done that with your book, because you said that you weren't going to hold any punches, and that's exactly what you've done. And I mentioned it's really well written. The poetry at the start of each chapter, I really really enjoyed that. The first poem, I thought, oh, I wonder who wrote that. Like some writers, they put quotes or poems or
Oh,
segments
yeah.
from other writers, and I was like, oh, and then I was like, it's Micah's poem. And then I was like, there's one at the start of every chapter. So it really is a powerful thing, mentally diseased. And I would love for you to tell the listeners where they can find a copy of that book today.
Okay. You can find Mentally Diseased. It is available on Amazon. The Digital, paperback, and hardcover is on there, and it is also on barnesandnoble.com. I'm still reaching out to distributors, some locally. Sometimes people get real uncomfortable when they'll say, "Well, what is your book about?" And I'll say, "Well, I was in the world's largest doomsday cult." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll pass on your information." But it is available online. You can, it's, some people said they couldn't find Mentally Diseased when they typed it in on Amazon. But if you look up Micah Losh, the book is, I think, the first thing that pops up. So,
And I will absolutely put a link in the episode description to the book so that people can go and find a copy if they would like to do so. And will you keep us updated with any news on your other two publications as well?
yeah, definitely. Like I said, I have the second one, it's compiled and formatted. I'm just waiting on the artist, and I want to do that one 6 months after. So I think that's June 10th. And then I'm hoping the third one, which I'm going to call Despicable, I'm still kind of working with it, and I'm kind of playing with what exactly I want to do, but I'm hoping to do that a year to the day after my first one. So, you know, I put my book for my son. I challenged a cult for him. So yeah, I would very much like my son to have access to three things I've written and to know his dad put out three books in a year because I mean he's everything.
That's incredible. I will make sure that we share the updates with the listeners so that we can all join in your journey through putting three books out in the world in a very short amount of time. I think I need to take some inspiration from you and stop procrastinating so much. Yeah, I think, oh, maybe I should do some writing, or maybe I should just sit here and watch this film. I need to channel some inner Micah, I think. But thank you
Yep.
so much for your time today, for coming and sharing your
Yeah.
story with us, for your brutal honesty, and for the time, effort, and energy that it takes to put a book out in the world that can help us to understand not only your personal experience, but also the Jehovah's Witnesses and the destructive organization that they are.
No worry. Thank you for having me, Casey. I really appreciate it.
Take care, Micah. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye. That is the end of this mini series with author Micah Losh. For more information on Micah's memoir, Mentally Diseased, you can follow the links in this episode description. And to get in touch with me, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker, Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast.